Hi, my name's Daryl Peterson, and I'm the manager of the Applications Engineering Department here at Micromeasurements. This afternoon, my colleague Paul Millard, who's one of our senior applications engineers, is here to help guide us through the installation of our StrainSmart software. With this particular example, we're going to use the System 8000, and we're going to step you through how to install the maintenance utility as well as the StrainSmart software for the System 8000. Paul's got his computer connected to the System 8000 scanner, and we're going to take you through a step-by-step guide of how to get this installed properly. So Paul, I think maybe the first thing we show them is the Getting Started Guide, which is a PDF file that comes with the StrainSmart software.
Yeah, what I've downloaded is either by disk or by Dropbox. We get you the maintenance utility programs folder, and we get you the StrainSmart folder, and within it is this quick start or getting started guide. And it's extremely helpful to give you sort of a review or an overview regarding the computer requirements that are needed. Hopefully you've done that ahead of time and you've got that ready.
And wouldn't you agree that probably one of the more challenging parts of installing the software for the 8000 is really setting up the computer to be able to communicate to the scanner?
Right.
The 8000 scanner requires a fixed IP address, so you will have to make a few modifications of your network in order to be able to talk to the 8000 scanner. And that's one of the things that this guide will help you with is to step you through how to do that.
And we'll do it in the video today, too.
Yeah.
We'll show you how to do it through Windows 10 in our case here. So in the Getting Started Guide, again, it's going to go through the computer requirements, the physical setup, including the scanner. And here's a simple example of either a single scanner with the provided crossover cable to your PC and multiple scanners that are going to go into a gigabit router to communicate with your PC.
One of the most important things to recognize here is that if you're going to connect just from the scanner to your computer is perfectly fine, but you need to be using a crossover cable or two straight cables in a crossover box. So if your intent is to go straight from scanner into PC, you need to have that crossover cable or that small crossover box in place in order for it to work properly.
Okay, so once you have that physical connection, then we need to go in and change the network settings, and we're going to be utilizing Windows 10 for this example. And what I'm going to be going after is commonly referred to as the IPv4 or the Internet Protocol version 4 settings. And where you can typically find it is if you start to drill down to your Ethernet connection and find your network. Now, hopefully you've got this isolated, because that's the recommendation, from any other networks. So here I'm only showing a single network on my Ethernet connection. When I go into that connection, I'm going to be looking at the properties, and I'm going to find my IPv4 right here. When I open up its properties, as is very common in PCs, it's going to wind up searching for whatever IP address it can find, it can connect to. In this case, we need to enter a static IP address of 192.168.0, and then what we haven't discussed yet is that the scanner has actually got an address of 4. So we need it to be something other than that. And the Getting Started Guide has it listed as 2.
One of the reasons that we pick something other than 1 is that a lot of times if you're going to connect the 8000 into a router, that router will have a default IP address of 1. So typically we skip over 1. We of course can't have the same IP address as the 8000 scanner, which is 4. So 2, like in the case with Paul's input, a lot of times I'll input 10. Really, it doesn't much matter as long as it's somewhere between typically 2 and 255, and you miss the IP address of the scanner.
Or scanners, actually.
Or scanner, yeah, that's true. It could be more than 1.
So to complete this operation, I'm going to hit the Tab button on my computer so that it automatically fills in the subnet mask, and then go ahead and accept and close everything. Not canceling, but closing everything out. So now I am hopefully fulfilled the obligations of what I need to do to create that static IP address, and the next step in the guide deals with what's called the maintenance utility program. This really needs to be run before any connectivity is attempted with StrainSmart. A lot of folks jump straight to the StrainSmart. Sometimes when people are moving the software to another PC, they forget about the maintenance utility, and then we get regular calls saying they can't connect. So again, in this video, we're going to invest most of the remaining time into this maintenance utility to show not only how to establish a connection, but to also the opportunity to update firmware and to perform a system calibration using an NIST traceable device. So for now, I'm going to sort of lose the getting started guide for a bit, and I'm going to go to the maintenance utility folder, and buried inside of there, again, it's sent out sometimes as a CD. So yeah, buried inside of there.
That's a good point. It should be a CD that you get with the 8000 scanner. And the important part of this to recognize is that this CD is separate from StrainSmart software, because with the 8000, you don't have to have StrainSmart to make it work. There's actually an application on this disk that you could run that has some basic functionality where you could use the 8000 and have it take data from strain gauges or thermocouples or high-level inputs. It doesn't have all the feature set that we have in StrainSmart, so a lot of our customers using 8000 actually use StrainSmart as well. But I just want you to understand that it's going to be on two separate disks or two separate software packages.
And as you can guess, with time, sometimes those CDs get separated from the system. And especially if you're trying to either update it, or we can often send Dropbox links to be able to update to later versions or later firmware, etc. So within this folder, there's going to be a couple of subfolders. Application software is just a non-StrainSmart version way of connecting to the scanner. Firmware update, you can see the latest here is 1.13. Maintenance utility software, that's where we're going to head next, but there's also a programmer's reference kit, so if you're into some NI connections, that's going to be available to you, as well as an instruction manual for everything involved. Within the maintenance utility software, there's only two choices. One is a PDF and how to do it, and the other one is to forge ahead and just run the setup routine. So this one is really straightforward. Actually, both this and the StrainSmart installation are pretty straightforward. Simply accepting agreements and defaults. I'm just going to simply let it go, get installed, and boom, it's done.
What, 15 seconds maybe? Maybe not even 15 seconds and you're done.
Right, but it's critical. Again, this part is absolutely critical to get the machine to run, a machine to connect, the PC to connect to your scanner. So now I've got this new program here that says Micromeasurements 8000. And underneath it, it's got a couple of things. It says the maintenance utility, which is what we're going after, a manual again, but also calibration reports. Remember that one there for just a few minutes from now. So when I ask it to run the maintenance utility, I get this interesting screen. The first one that I'm going to head for is this setup. And this is where a lot of business gets conducted. And again, the minimal thing that you need to do before trying to run StrainSmart is run this little routine called IP settings. If you have other data acquisition systems utilizing StrainSmart, this will look familiar. It's really a separate program for IP settings in which not only establishes the communications and allows you to change the IP address of the scanner, but it also saves it so that StrainSmart knows where to find the connecting information. So here, right out of the box, because everything is defaults, both in the scanner and the software, we have instantly connected to the scanner.
Yeah, and if you have more than one, maybe this is a good time to talk about this. If you have more than one scanner that you're trying to connect and synchronize together, you're going to give each one of those a unique IP address, and this is the utility that you'll use in order to do that, to give it that new IP address. So for example, let's say we had 3 scanners. The first one might be 192.168.0 and 4. The next one 0 and 5, the next one 0 and 6. And that'll make it easier as you start to build those channels and build one complete system.
And one way to do that would be to simply add the scanner. There's a button here that talks about adding it, in which you can say manually give it an address by hand if you know what it is, or a discovery mode in which you can give it a range of IP addresses for it to go and search. We already know the address of this scanner, but this is one way to identify multiple other scanners. They will fill in the field and they will show as online. But if you do wind up saying, okay, I want to manually enter the scanner, and I want to give it, as Daryl suggested, 192.168.05, and I tell it that it's finished, it's now going to show up on my list, but I can't find it. It's not even there. But this scanner, that one is there. So this one is pretty easy to remove. And of course, the one that we're connected to still shows as being online. Now, if I wanted to change this to a second or a third or more scanner, this button properties right here allows me to do so. It shows my current situation, and then it shows where I can change it. Anything that I change will get saved.
Yeah, some networks you may find that you want this 8000 on your company network, and it may have a different set of numbers that represent the IP address, and this is the spot where you would make those changes. And then you'll have to send those commands down to the scanner, and then you'll have to restart the scanner. But once you do that, then it should come up with that IP address that matches your company network.
So I'm going to close this out now, and I feel very comfortable that I'm communicating with the scanner, and really that's all the minimal effort that's needed from the maintenance utility. I could now close this out, as it says, wants to save it. I close this out, and now I could potentially close down the maintenance utility, fire up StrainSmart, and connect to the scanner, which I will do in just a moment. But I did want to show a couple other features regarding the maintenance utility. Oh, by the way, you don't want to run maintenance utility and StrainSmart at the same time. They will complete and compete for the scanner's attention. Please don't do them at the same time. So staying in the Setup tab, I'm going to mash the button that says Update Hardware Info, just because I'm a little paranoid about it not having updated. And there's a couple things that are interesting. It only sees the one scanner, which is running at 32C. It says it has a VCal card installed, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Serial number, Firmware 1.11. Oh, that's interesting, because didn't I just see it was 1.13 a little earlier?
That was the latest.
Okay. And the hardware version, IP address, and the UDPs. So everything seems okay there, but I'm a little nervous here because I seem to have old firmware. That's not unusual when we send you new software, new firmware, and you've got an older machine. So if I go to the firmware button, it says, okay, I found the scanner. I think I know where your file is for the firmware. You want me to upgrade it? And I'm saying no, because actually I think that the firmware resides somewhere else. I think the firmware resides on my desktop. Whoops. On my desktop, under my 8000 utility folder, in my CD image, and here's the screen where I was before. Firmware update version 1.3. There's the bin file.
Yep.
So I simply select that, tell it to upgrade, and it says, are you sure? And am I in safe boot mode? That's okay. I'm ready to run it today anyways. And down in the program manager, it basically is going to show you little updates or statuses of what you do. So here it says it's rebooting the scanner after having installed it. It's been changed from 1.11 to 1.13.
Yeah, so now we're up to date with the latest firmware to control that scanner.
Yep. The other thing that I wanted to show you is the next tab that says calibration. This is a system calibration. So what that means is that we wind up as an option with the 8000 and the 9000, but standard with the 7000 and 7100 is a VCal card.
Yep.
The VCal card is an NIST traceable device based on the resistance, in which you can send that in at your recalibration cycle, and then gets provided for either the 8000 or any of the other data acquisition systems to do a system adjustment, not just a verification.
I think there's a couple of important things to point out about this VCal card. Number one is that your 8000 scanner, your 8000 scanner can operate without it. You don't have to have it. True. You can scan, record, have all the functionality. You just can't calibrate that scanner. And one of the, I guess, the unique parts about it is that this card will actually inject voltages into the channels. It'll inject these voltages and effectively measure what it sees and compare that to a reference, and then it determines whether or not these channels are within spec. And if it's If it's within spec, it'll report back that it's met the calibration. If it's not within spec, then you're looking at potentially sending that scanner out for repair. But the cool thing about these VCal cards is that that's the only thing that you have to get calibrated periodically by the manufacturer, Micromeasurements, is that small VCal card. And you can ship that out to us and continue to use your scanner while we're calibrating your VCal card and sending it back. And even some customers, in order to eliminate any downtime at all, they'll have a couple of different VCal cards that they use to cycle through multiple scanners. You know, you could have 2 VCal cards in one scanner, or you could have multiple scanners and use one VCal card to calibrate all of them. You get to choose how you want to handle your calibration, but it really eliminates downtime for customers that need to maintain that traceability and that calibration with their equipment. One more thing I want to add is that typically when you calibrate the box, I would recommend that you disconnect the inputs from the box, because the voltages actually come from the VCal card. And I have had customers before that experienced issues calibrating the scanner when they had their inputs connected because they had a path to ground that they weren't aware of. So if you're going to calibrate your 8000 scanner, just take a few minutes, disconnect your inputs, and then calibrate the box. And assuming it passes, then you can reconnect your inputs and take off with your testing.
Good point. Good point. So ready to do a calibration. We're just going to introduce some initials here. And since it's found the scanner and everything seems to be copacetic with it, I'm going to tell it to go ahead and calibrate the scanner so I have something to talk about here, because it'll take just a second, do those voltage injections, do those voltage measurements, and then it's going to wind up reporting back what the final result is. There's actually 5 different steps, 5 different stages in which it's getting evaluated. And this report is going to be documented on your PC, and so you can actually retrieve previous reports and do a comparison to see what's been done in the past. But as I scroll down the report, you'll see that there's going to be some documentation regarding all the role players. And then for each channel, it's going to have the ultimate result of passing or failing the channels for each of the 5 ranges that it's verifying the integrity of the scanner. So at this point, I'm absolutely tickled pink that there's no issues, no problems. And so really the final test, the final judgment, if you will, is going to be to connect StrainSmart.
Yeah.
So I'm going to close out the maintenance utility. Again, you don't want to run them at the same time. And I'm going to scroll down to what should be, oh, I haven't installed it yet.
No.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So on the latest version, as of this video taping, is version 1.5.4. And there's a simple installation executable right here. As I fire that up and make the...
I'm going to see how long it takes. So
okay,
you
ready?
keep talking.
Agree, and here we go.
Yeah. See how long it takes.
We could always check the time on the video afterwards, right?
Yeah, true.
But once the StrainSmart is installed, there's nothing really more to do. I should be able to connect to it. I should then be able to create sensors, create material information, create assignments, create scan sessions, and go get my data. It's done. So it's over.
All right, so total time was 34 minus 19. What is that, 15 seconds?
I don't know. I'm stressing out because I'm doing a video. Here's the StrainSmart 8000. And so we're going to fire that one up. And it's going to take a little bit of time because it's going to make sure that all the integrity of the connections is there and that the software is there and all of its reference information is there. It's just going to take a little bit of investment and time here to get going. But beyond that, again, the ultimate test is going to be, can I connect? And then if you're familiar with it, the lower left-hand corner, it's going to come up with a button saying that it's offline and not connected. And then there's a simple press of one radio button that's going to connect it. And if I've done everything right today, it should go green, and I'm ready to go do testing. Again, this is all required. All the maintenance utility and all this connectivity is required before leading up to this point. So when I mash the button here, tell it to connect, it goes out, does some handshaking, figures out what's out there, documents it, feeds it back, and I'm connected. Ready to go play.
So I think just to summarize, we've gone through the PDF file that comes with StrainSmart that kind of gives you a guide of these steps in terms of the installation. We went through the 8000 maintenance utility installation. A lot of our customers don't realize they've got to install two separate things, but for sure you do with the 8000. Get that maintenance utility installed. Paul went into a very detailed explanation of how that maintenance utility works. And then really it's a matter of installing StrainSmart, and then you're off and running. And literally you could get this accomplished in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes. That's one of the powers behind using micromeasurements data acquisition systems, is we do intend for them to be turnkey. You don't have to be a programmer to run our equipment. All you have to do is take the equipment, unpack it, connect the cables together, do the installation, and you should be up and running. And in our case, we were up and running in about 15 to 20 minutes. So anything you maybe want to add to that? Or
No. Everything was pretty clean. Everything went smooth. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact Applications Engineering. We'll help you get through this, but hopefully by having a video of this, sharing the desktop and all, that you can see exactly what's involved and maybe compare what might be going wrong for you with what we're doing here in the video.
And just to reiterate, if you'd like to find out more information about the System 8000 or StrainSmart or any of our products for that matter, please feel free to take a look at our website at www.micro-measurements.com. Or if you have questions and you'd like to talk to someone like Paul or myself, please feel free to pick up the phone and dial us at 919-365-3800 and follow the prompts till you get to Applications Engineering, and we'd be happy to answer any questions for you. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Yay! We're over.